In today's world, the arrow on the navigation screen has become our guide. We trust it more than our own intuition. On a hot day, a woman stood at a fork in Death Valley, where she had to choose between the voice of reason and her digital assistant. Her decision would set off a chain of events that would shock America and force us to rethink our blind trust in technology. Death Valley got its name for a reason. Every year, this place claims the lives of people who underestimate its treacherous nature. Behind the beautiful photos in tourist brochures lies a merciless desert where temperatures melt and dehydration kills faster than hunger. Alicia Sanchez had no idea that the morning of August 1st, 2009 would be the beginning of a nightmare. At 42, this nurse was used to long trips, but today's journey from Las Vegas to Death Valley was planned to be special. Carlos, her 11-year-old son, was going to see a real desert for the first time. A small dachshund dozed in the front seat as the Jeep carried the family away from the last signs of civilization toward one of the most dangerous places on Earth. "Mom, is it really so hot there that you can fry eggs on a rock?" he asked, studying the photos in the guidebook. Alicia smiled as she looked at her son in the rearview mirror. This was his first encounter with the real desert, and his curiosity reminded her why she had planned this trip. Alicia knew the value of caution. Years of working as a nurse had taught her to act quickly in critical situations, but always with an understanding of the risks. Frequent moves across the country had made her independent, but those same moves had strengthened her bond with Carlos. A recent move to Las Vegas had opened up new possibilities. Just a 2-hour drive away were the natural wonders she had read about in medical school. This summer, she wanted to show her son Scotty's castle and the impressive Ubihibi volcanic crater. The GPS gave her directions, and Alicia loaded 24 bottles of water, sandwiches, and everything else she needed for a day trip into the car. When the GPS told her to turn onto Owl Hole Spring Road, Alicia followed the directions, unaware of any problems. But after a few miles, it became clear that this was not a tourist route. The gravel road wound through rugged terrain littered with sharp rocks the size of fists. Carlos felt the car bounce over a particularly deep pothole and began to worry that they were on the right route. Even the dog whimpered nervously with every jolt. Alicia assured her son that the GPS knew better, although she was beginning to have her doubts. The road looked deserted, not leading to any popular attractions. A few miles later, their fears were confirmed by a loud bang. Alicia stopped and got out to inspect the damage. What she saw made her really worried. The front right tire wasn't just punctured, it had been torn almost in half by a sharp rock. She reassured Carlos, explaining that they would change the tire, but she felt a growing sense of unease. Damage like this only happened on seriously rough terrain. Examining the other tires, she noticed multiple cuts from rocks. They only had one spare tire. Carlos got out of the car to help his mother. Alicia asked him to pass her a wrench, and he diligently searched through the tools, proud that he could be of use. These moments, when they worked as a team, always reminded her why she cherished the relationship so much. After changing the tire, Alicia left the flat tire by the side of the road along with an empty bottle, explaining to her son that someone might need them. She took out her phone and sent a quick message to her relatives in Ohio to let them know she had a flat tire. Little did she know that this message would be her last. As they continued on their way, they noticed with alarm that their cell phones had lost service. Alicia checked her phone several times, but the screen stubbornly displayed no service. Carlos tried turning on the radio, but all he could hear was static. The boy asked what they would do if they needed help, and for the first time, real alarm could be heard in his voice. Alicia assured him that they had plenty of water and food, and that the GPS would lead them to people. But even as she said the words, she felt uncertainty tighten her throat. The terrain around them was becoming increasingly wild. Rocky hills gave way to sandy stretches where their Jeep struggled to maintain traction. They hadn't seen a single person or car in over an hour. Even the dachshund, usually calm on trips, was shifting nervously from paw to paw. Alicia began to realize that the GPS had led them to a place where tourists don't go. But the device continued to confidently show the route, and turning back on this broken road without a spare tire seemed an even riskier decision. A fork in the road appeared as their last chance to correct their mistake. Among the rocks and sand, the road split in two directions. To the right was a wider, well-trodden path that clearly led to some kind of structure. To the left, a two-lane track was barely visible, more like the tracks of cars that had passed long ago. Alicia stopped the car and studied the options. Her intuition told her to turn right. The right road looked safer, more logical. Perhaps it led to the communications tower that could be seen in the distance, but the navigation screen showed a bright blue arrow pointing left without hesitation. The device she had relied on throughout the trip promised the shortest route to her destination. Could modern technology really be so wrong? Carlos noticed her hesitation and asked why they had stopped. Alicia explained that she was choosing a route. A battle was raging in her mind between instinct and trust in technology. She worked in a hospital where computers saved lives every day. The navigator seemed like an equally reliable assistant. Alicia didn't know that in 2009, navigation systems often used outdated map data. Abandoned mining trails and old military roads were still marked as passable routes. Manufacturers couldn't keep up with updating information about the actual condition of remote trails. After a long moment of hesitation, Alicia made a decision that would change two lives forever. Trusting the blue arrow on the screen, she turned the steering wheel to the left. The car slowly moved along the narrow trail leading to the Olshead Mountains. With every mile, the road became more dangerous, winding between sharp rocks and patches of loose sand. They were moving away from any possibility of meeting people, entering the most remote areas of Death Valley. After about 3 miles, the Jeep tilted sharply, and with a dull thud, its front wheels fell into a deep hole hidden under a layer of sand. Carlos became alarmed and asked what had happened. Alicia assured him that they would get out, but several attempts to drive out only made the situation worse. Their Jeep was stuck axle deep, and without four-wheel drive, it was impossible to get out. Alicia and Carlos found themselves trapped 30 miles from the nearest road, in one of the deadliest places on Earth. What had started as a normal family trip had turned into a terrifying struggle for survival. For the first few hours, Alicia remained calm. They had enough water for several days, food, and shelter in their car. The air conditioning was still working, using fuel from the tank. Someone would surely notice their absence and start searching for them. But Death Valley does not forgive optimism. The air temperature reached 116.6 degrees, turning the metal of the car into a red-hot oven. Even with the air conditioning running, it was difficult to breathe inside. Alicia began to ration the water strictly. 24 bottles seemed like an impressive supply, but in such conditions, they could run out very quickly. By the evening of the first day, it was clear that there would be no quick rescue. Alicia tried to catch a cell phone signal by climbing the nearest hill, but the mountains were a dead zone for any communication. Endless rocks and sand stretched out around her, with no sign of human presence. Even screams were swallowed up by the emptiness. Night brought temporary relief from the heat, but not from the anxiety. Carlos was holding up well, but she could see the growing concern in his eyes. The dog was breathing heavily even in the cool air, as if sensing that the worst was yet to come. The second day began with desperate attempts to remedy the situation. Alicia dug away the sand around the wheels and placed stones underneath for traction, while Carlos helped by carrying small rocks. But the Jeep only sank deeper into the sand. After 2 hours of futile attempts, Alicia realized that they couldn't get out without help and went to look for a cell phone signal. When she returned empty-handed after 6 agonizing hours, Carlos's eyes were still shining with hope. "Well, Mom, did you find anyone?" Alicia hugged her son. "I'm still looking." She couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth, that there were dozens of miles of completely deserted desert stretching out around them. By evening, what she feared most happened. The engine stalled with the last drops of gasoline, and with it, the air conditioner fell silent. In the ensuing silence, only the dog's heavy breathing could be heard. The following days merged into one agonizing ordeal. The water supply was dwindling alarmingly fast. Even with strict rationing, 24 bottles could not sustain 2 people and a dog for long in extreme heat. Carlos began to change. The active boy became lethargic. His skin reddened from the sun. Alicia recognized the symptoms of dehydration she had previously seen in patients, but now they were affecting her own son. August 5 was a turning point. Carlos's condition deteriorated sharply. He began vomiting, which was especially dangerous in a state of dehydration. Alicia knew that children's bodies cope with heat worse than adults. By midday, the boy had almost stopped sweating, an alarming sign that his body was entering a state of critical water conservation. Alicia tried to cool her son down in every way she could. She wet his clothes with the last drops of water and moved him to the coolest spot in the shade under the car. But in the harsh conditions of Death Valley, these measures could only delay the inevitable. In the afternoon, Carlos lost consciousness, and his breathing became barely noticeable. Carlos died in his mother's arms in the afternoon of August 5, 2009. Alicia did not let him go for several hours, pressing his cooling body to her, whispering his name, praying for the impossible. When reality finally broke through the wall of denial, a scream escaped from her chest that even made the dog jump aside. Guilt gnawed at her more than thirst. Every decision replayed in her head, turning left at the fork, trusting the GPS, not bringing enough water. On the 6th day without water, Alicia's body began to fail. Her motherly love became stronger than her instinct for self-preservation. She would fight not for her own life, but to ensure that her son's body would not remain in this cursed desert forever. While Alicia was fighting for her life in the Ulshad Mountains, alarm bells were ringing in Las Vegas. On August 5th, she didn't show up for work at the hospital, which was completely out of character for her. Her colleagues tried to call her, but her phone didn't answer. By evening, their concern turned to panic. The hospital administration contacted the emergency contacts listed on Alicia's personnel file. Around 5 p.m., her relatives in Ohio received a call asking about her whereabouts. The last thing they knew about Alicia's plans was a trip to Death Valley and a text message about a flat tire on August 1st. After that, all contact was lost. Relatives immediately contacted the Las Vegas police. Officers checked Alicia's apartment and confirmed that she had indeed been missing for several days. Given that the last contact was from Death Valley, the case was transferred to the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, which had jurisdiction over the national park. By the evening of August 5th, a search and rescue operation was underway. On the morning of August 6th, National Park Rangers joined the search. The operation was led by experienced ranger Amber Natras, who knew Death Valley better than most people. She understood that in the August heat, it was a matter of hours, not days. Initially, the search focused on the northern part of the park, where the landmarks Alicia had mentioned to her relatives were located: Scotty's Castle and Ubahibi Crater. These were popular tourist spots with good roads, where a stranded car would be spotted quickly. But a search of the northern areas yielded no results. Neither the car nor any signs of the family's presence could be found. This meant that the search had to be expanded to other areas, and the park covered more than 21,000 square miles of unforgiving desert. A key clue was Alicia's text message about a flat tire on Owl Hole Spring Road. Natras knew this road, a 30-mile gravel trail requiring four-wheel drive, which often confused GPS navigators. Many tourists ended up there by mistake, unaware of the difficulty of the route. Early in the morning on August 6th, Natras began patrolling Owl Hole Spring Road. She carefully scanned the shoulders for any signs of human presence. The road wound through rugged terrain where every turn could hide a tragedy. Around 10 a.m., Natras spotted what she was looking for. A flat tire and an empty water bottle lay by the side of the road. These were the exact details mentioned in Alicia's report. These were the first physical traces of the missing family, The ranger carefully examined the area around the find. Tire tracks were visible in the soft ground, leading further down the road. The car had continued on after changing the tire, which meant the search had to be expanded. Following the faint tire tracks, Natris ventured deeper into the Owl's Head Mountains. The terrain became increasingly rugged and dangerous. Even in a four-wheel drive ranger vehicle, it was difficult to drive here. After a few miles, the tracks led to a fork, where the official trail turned right toward a communications tower. But the tire tracks clearly showed a left turn onto an unmarked two-track trail. Natris realized what had happened. The GPS had directed the family down a route that shouldn't have existed. Proceeding along the dangerous trail, Natris reached the spot where the tire tracks suddenly ended. Ahead, partially hidden by rocks, stood a white Jeep Cherokee. The car looked like a wounded animal. The front wheels had sunk into a deep hole, and the rear end was tilted upward, creating the eerie sensation that the desert was slowly engulfing the vehicle. At around 11 Hala a.m. on August 6th, the dead silence of the mountains was broken by a human scream. The woman by the car heard the sound of an approaching engine and began waving her arms desperately. There was so much pain in her voice that Natris immediately knew she was too late. Alicia Sanchez no longer resembled the healthy nurse who had left Las Vegas a week earlier. 6 days in the hell of Death Valley had turned her into a living skeleton. Her lips were cracked, her skin was sunburned, and her sunken eyes were filled with the shadows of death. Every step was an incredible effort, but she stood and told the ranger that her child was dead. Natris acted quickly, but carefully. She gave Alicia water in small sips, knowing that her dehydrated body might not be able to handle a large amount of liquid at once. Every sip had to be monitored, even though the woman was ready to drink the entire bottle at once. Looking into the car, the ranger saw what she had expected but was not ready to accept. Under the blanket lay the small body of an 11-year-old boy. A dachshund was barely breathing nearby. The dog was so exhausted that it couldn't lift its head, but its eyes still followed the movements of the people, clinging to life with the same determination as its owner. Natris immediately radioed for a medical evacuation helicopter. In the mountainous terrain, and with no access roads, air evacuation was the only way to get Alicia to the hospital quickly. The helicopter from China Lake Air Force Base arrived within an hour. The pilots took a risk landing in the difficult mountainous terrain, but they understood the critical nature of the situation. Every minute of delay could cost Alicia her life. The medical team assessed the victim's condition as extremely serious. She was severely dehydrated, suffering from heat exhaustion and multiple sunburns. But most importantly, she was alive and responding to treatment. Alicia was placed on a stretcher and loaded into the helicopter. Carlos's body was also evacuated for an autopsy. The dachshund remained in the care of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, who promised to take care of the animal until Alicia recovered. The flight to Sunrise Hospital in Las Vegas took about 2 hours. The helicopter flew over 130 miles of desert, demonstrating the vastness of the area in which a single family could get lost. The medics on board maintained Alicia's vital signs and prepared her for intensive care. At the hospital, Alicia was immediately placed in intensive care. Her condition was classified as critical but stable. The main task was to restore her water and salt balance without risking her heart or kidneys. Doctors administered saline solution intravenously, carefully monitoring the process. Replenishing fluids too quickly could cause brain swelling or heart failure. The process required constant monitoring and precision. Alicia spent 3 days under medical supervision. Her physical recovery was successful. The young, healthy woman's body was coping with the effects of extreme dehydration, but the psychological trauma of losing her only son required a completely different kind of treatment. On August 9th, doctors discharged Alicia in satisfactory condition. Physically, she had recovered, but her emotional wounds were just beginning to heal. That same day, she was reunited with her dog, whom the sheriffs had taken care of. They fed him, washed him, and had him examined by a veterinarian. The tragedy in Death Valley received widespread coverage in the local media. Popular publications reported in detail on the case. which clearly demonstrated the dangers of blindly trusting GPS technology. The San Bernardino County coroner officially determined the cause of Carlos's death as dehydration combined with heat stroke. No signs of violence or other causes of death were found. His death was classified as a tragic accident. Alicia returned to her apartment in Las Vegas, but the city that was supposed to be her new home now only reminded her of her loss. Sources are silent about her future, but the psychological trauma of her ordeal undoubtedly changed her entire life. The little dachshund became the only living reminder of that trip. Its survival in conditions that proved fatal for a child highlighted the cruel randomness of the tragedy. In media reports, the dog became a symbol of hope amid the widespread grief. The story of Alicia and Carlos was a turning point for Death Valley. The death of an 11-year-old boy due to a GPS error shook the national park's leadership and forced them to rethink their approach to tourist safety. What began as a personal tragedy for one family turned into a national issue. How much can we trust technology in the wild? The case received widespread media coverage as a striking example of a GPS-related death, a term that began to appear in headlines across the country. The reports did not simply recount the tragedy. They asked uncomfortable questions of navigation equipment manufacturers and park administrators. The Sanchez story became a catalyst for systemic changes designed to prevent similar tragedies from happening again. Modern technology, designed to make travel safer, showed its dark side in the hands of unprepared people who trusted an electronic assistant more than their own instincts. The story of the Sanchez family forces us to rethink our relationship with the technologies we trust with our lives. At what point does convenience become a dangerous addiction? What would you have chosen at that fateful crossroads? The most tragic thing about this story is not Carlos's death itself, but the fact that it could have been avoided. One right decision, one moment of distrust in technology, and the boy could be telling his friends about his adventure in the desert today. Share in the comments if you use a navigation system in your daily life. Have you ever had moments when technology failed you at a critical moment? If this story made you think, be sure to like this video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss any new stories. And remember, sometimes the shortest route on the map turns out to be a road to nowhere. Take care of yourselves, and see you in the next episodes.